Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and welcome to Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining us tonight. Here are the headlines.
The fatal stabbing of British lawmaker David Amess was a terrorist incident, according to police, as MPs pressed for tougher security in the wake of the second killing of a UK politician while meeting constituents in just over 5 years.
The Islamic State group claims responsibility for a suicide bomb attack on a Shiite mosque in the southern Afghan city of Kandahar that killed at least 41 people and injured scores more.
And Myanmar's junta chief will be excluded from an upcoming ASEAN summit, the group said Saturday, a rare rebuke as concerns rise over the military government's commitment to defusing a bloody crisis.
And 3 astronauts successfully docked with China's new space station on what is set to be Beijing's longest crewed mission to date and the latest landmark in its drive to become a major space power.
First, 3 people were killed Saturday when an earthquake struck the Indonesian tourist island of Bali, according to the disaster agency. Take a look. The 4.8 magnitude quake struck at a relatively shallow depth of 10 kilometers or 6 miles northeast of the town of Banjar, Wanasari. Shallow quakes tend to do more damage than deep tremors. 2 people died when the quake triggered a landslide that buried their house in Bangli Regency, while another person was killed in the port town of Karangasem. Officials said the death toll wasn't expected to rise. Disaster agency spokesman Abdul Muhari said the quake was felt strongly for 5 seconds. People were panicking and they ran from their houses when the quake hit. The tremor's epicenter was far from the main tourist hub in Bali, which is slowly reopening to international visitors after a pandemic shutdown. Indonesia experiences frequent quakes due to its position on the Pacific Ring of Fire, an arc of intense seismic activity where tectonic plates collide that stretches from Japan through Southeast Asia and across the Pacific Basin.
The onset of northeast monsoon, or amihan, amid the re-emergence of the La Nina phenomenon, is brightening the water supply potential of Angat Dam in Luzon here in the Philippines. On October 15, Pagasa announced the termination of this year's habagat season in the country. Take a look.
Recent oceanic and atmospheric conditions indicate La Nina has developed in tropical Pacific. Since July of 2021, the sea surface temperature in the central and equatorial Pacific started to cool, and further temperature drop strengthened in September, reaching La Nina threshold. Based on the latest forecast, La Nina is likely to persist until the first quarter of 2022.
Water in Angat is still below its normal high level, but amihan can change that, especially with La Nina's help, according to Pagasa hydrologist Edgar de la Cruz on Saturday. He said rain from amihan will rise Angat's water and bring this closer to its normal high level. He also said the watershed of Angat is located closer to the eastern section of Luzon, so this dam generally receives more water from the rain of amihan than Habagat, which mainly affects the western section. The water rise will improve Angat's capability to serve its customers in the coming months.
Meanwhile, the Cumbre Vieja volcano continues to spew lava and ashes after more than 3 weeks erupting on the island of La Palma. New flows of liquid lava threaten villages nearby, where around 7,000 people have been evacuated. There is no prospect of the volcanic eruption in Spain's Canary Islands ending in the short term or medium term, according to experts last Wednesday, after 3.5 weeks of activity. Other experts have suggested the event would last for weeks or even months. Now, beginning on September 19, the latest eruption is the third in a century for La Palma, an island of 85,000 people after San Juan in 1949 and Teneguía in 1971. So far, no one has been killed by the continuous lava flows, but the molten rock has covered around 640 hectares and destroyed 1,400 buildings, 764 of them homes. The Volca Technical Director, Miguel Angel Morcuende, said more than 6,000 people have been evacuated, hundreds of them leaving all their belongings to the lava.
At a geothermal power plant in Berlin, eastern El Salvador, 300 computer processors mine Bitcoin using renewable energy from volcanoes. Bitcoin became legal tender in El Salvador in September, making it the first country to adopt it officially.
Y atrás lo que tenemos es un contenedor a donde existe una serie de procesadores que están actualmente ya minando.
No estamos afectando la matriz energética de El Salvador, al contrario, la estamos aumentando. Y de eso que hemos aumentado, hemos tomado estos 1.5 megavatios para iniciar este primer paso con el tema de la minería.
According to CNBC News, President Nayib Bukele, who has banked his political future on a nationwide Bitcoin experiment, tweeted early Friday morning that this is the country's maiden voyage into volcano-powered Bitcoin mining. Bukele indicated in his tweet Friday that the mining project was still a work in progress and that they are still testing and installing new mining equipment. The president also provided a breakdown of the mining rewards so far. El Salvador is literally dubbed the land of volcanoes, and already geothermal energy accounts for nearly a fourth of its domestic energy production, according to official data. The move by El Salvador is also a boon for the larger debate around Bitcoin's carbon footprint.
Meanwhile, delegates from 195 countries pledged to set ambitious goals to halt the loss of biodiversity and destruction of ecosystems as the first phase of a key UN summit ended Friday. Now, the COP15 gathering in South China's Kunming saw the adoption of a declaration to recognize the importance of biodiversity in human health, strengthen species protection laws, and improve the sharing of genetic resources. It will be followed by discussions next January in Geneva, culminating in the second summit in April in Kunming to hammer out more detailed conservation targets for the next decade. Around 1 million animal and plant species are threatened with extinction as a result of habitat encroachment, overexploitation, pollution, the spread of invasive species, and climate change. On Tuesday, China pledged $233 million for a new fund to protect biodiversity in developing countries, with Japan earlier promising $17 million. The UK also recently committed $4 billion for global conservation projects over the next 5 years, and France has promised to spend 30% of its climate finance on biodiversity. The UN Convention on Biological Diversity has been ratified by 195 countries and the European Union, although not the United States, the world's biggest polluter, historically, with the parties meeting every 2 years. COP15's biodiversity discussions are separate from the weightier COP26 summit next month, where world leaders are under pressure to act on the climate crisis.
The fatal stabbing of British MP David Amis was a terrorist incident, according to police, as they investigated the second killing of a UK politician while meeting voters since 2016. The Metropolitan Police said the preliminary findings had revealed a potential motivation linked to Islamist extremism.
Well, I think all our hearts are full of shock and sadness today to the loss of Sir David Amis MP, who was killed in his constituency surgery in a church after almost 40 years of continuous service to the people of Essex and the whole of the United Kingdom. above all, he was one of the kindest, nicest, most gentle people in politics. And he also had an outstanding record of passing laws to help the most vulnerable, whether the people who are suffering from endometriosis, passing laws to end cruelty to animals, or doing a huge amount to reduce the fuel poverty suffered by people up and down the country.
Amos, a 69-year-old pro-Brexit conservative lawmaker, was stabbed to death inside a church on Friday while holding a fortnightly consultation with his constituents in the small town of Leigh-on-Sea in Essex, east of London. Police arrested a 25-year-old man at the scene on suspicion of murder and recovered a knife. Essex police said officers had responded within minutes to reports of the stabbing shortly after 12:05 p.m. and arrived to find Amos had suffered multiple injuries. Multiple UK media outlets citing sources reported that the suspect was believed to be a British national with Somali heritage. All Britain's living former prime ministers also paid tribute to Amos, including Theresa May, who called it a tragic day for democracy. Prince William and his wife Kate said the couple were shocked and saddened and noted Amos had dedicated 40 years of his life to serving his community.
In Afghanistan, at least 47 people were killed and 70 wounded when suicide bombers attacked a Shiite mosque in the southern city of Kandahar. Eyewitnesses described seeing the bombers enter the mosque and exchanging gunfire with guards. Take a look.
ځای کارمند یم په دغه مسجد کې کار کوم نو موږ ته لمونځ کوله د لمانځه وخت و د جمعې لمونځ و نو چې د ټکانو اواز وشوله دلته مسجد ته 2 نفره داخل شوي وو پرګه پیرداران باندې ټک کړي وو نو بیا پیرداران پر هغو باندې ټکان کړي وو نو بیا د مسجد په دا رهراو کې یو نفر ځان اجازه کړی دی بیا 2 نفره نور مسجد ته داخل شوي دي چې دلته
The Islamic State claimed responsibility for the attack. The assault came just a week after a suicide attack on Shiite worshippers at a mosque in the northern city of Kunduz, which was claimed by the Islamic State group also.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says hundreds of fighters loyal to the Islamic State militant group are congregating in northern Afghanistan with plans to move between ex-Soviet Central Asian countries disguised as refugees.
К сожалению, общество. Отчетливо видна концентрация вблизи границ Содружества экстремистских и террористических группировок. ИГИЛ, Исламское движение Узбекистана, Джамаат, Ансаруллах, Аль-Каида и целого ряда других. По нашим данным, количество только игиловцев на севере Афганистана насчитывает порядка 2000 человек. Их лидеры вынашивают планы по распространению влияния на центральноазиатские государства, на российские регионы своего влияния. Делают ставку на разжигание этноконфессиональных конфликтов и религиозной ненависти. Террористы стремятся проникать на территорию Содружества, в том числе и под видом беженцев.
The Taliban, which seized control of Kabul from pro-Western government in mid-August, are seeking international recognition as well as assistance to avoid a humanitarian disaster. Putin's special envoy to Afghanistan, Zamir Kabulov, told Russian news agency Interfax Friday that Taliban representatives would attend an international conference in Moscow next week alongside regional players Iran, China, and Pakistan. Putin on Friday said there was no need to rush with official recognition of the Taliban, but noted, quote, "We understand that we need to interact with them," end quote.
In other news, Myanmar's junta chief will be excluded from an upcoming ASEAN summit, according to the group today, a rare rebuke as concerns rise over the military government's commitment to defusing a bloody crisis. Now, the current ASEAN chair, Brunei, said foreign ministers from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, agreed at an emergency meeting late Friday that Min Aung Hlaing would not be invited to the October 26th to the 28th summit. The bloc has expressed disappointment at a lack of cooperation from the junta, which continues to crack down brutally on dissent. More than 1,000 civilians have been killed, according to a local monitoring group. Part of the consensus was to allow a long-delayed visit by a special envoy, Brunei's second foreign minister, Erywan Yusof. ASEAN has insisted that he meets with all parties concerned, but the junta rejected any proposed meetings with people on trial. Among them, Aung San Suu Kyi, who is facing charges including sedition and flouting coronavirus restrictions during last year's polls. ASEAN has been under international pressure to address unrest that erupted after the putsch, including massive protests, renewed clashes between the military and ethnic rebel armies in border regions, and an economy spiraling into freefall.
A thief in a tractor has led police on a destructive chase through suburban streets and onto train lines in Australia after allegedly stealing motorbikes from a shopfront. Queensland police released dramatic footage of the moment a farm vehicle plowed into a motorbike store's window early Friday morning in Ipswich, west of Brisbane. According to police, the driver then got out of the cabin and attached two motorbikes to a boom on the front of the vehicle before driving off. But as the tractor attempted to flee police vehicles, the boom and the two bikes were dropped onto the road. The tractor then hurtled along roads and damaged fences before crashing through a gate onto a rail line while police followed. Trains were stopped as the vehicle fled along the railway, cut through bushland and backyards before eventually sliding into a tree. The man then ran away but tracked and arrested by police in the long grass of a creek. Now, the 41-year-old was charged with several offenses, including the dangerous operation of a motor vehicle and evading police. No one was injured in that incident.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Hindi ito namumunga at hindi pa lubos na nakikilala. Abay sa larangan ng agrikultura, ito pala ay umaarangkada.
Halaman?
Oh, hindi ko alam.
Hindi ko alam yung kung ano yun.
Citronella yung tinanim namin kasi madali hong kumita. Tuloy-tuloy po yung harvest.
Nag-try ako dito lang sa paligid ko lang. Ang dami namang nagbilihan.
Skincare, personal care, home care, plant care, pet care. Kayang-kaya ng Citronella.
Mayroon siyang calming ingredients, nare-relax yung buong katawan mo.
Lots of benefit in one product lang.
Ako po si Robin Padilla at ito po ang unlad. Kagapay sa hanap buhay.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Welcome back. The Department of Health described as a success the first day of the pilot vaccination of children in Metro Manila, noting that none of the more than 1,100 minors aged 15 to 17 experienced any adverse reaction. Take a look.
Actually, naging matagumpay po yung simula ng ating vaccination rollout for our pediatric population with comorbidities kahapon. As of 8 p.m. last night, ang total po na nabakunahan ng mga kabataan na may comorbidities was 1,151. Ito po ay naitala kagabi pagkatapos po makapagsumite itong 8 ospital na kasama po natin dito. And according to the reports, wala po tayong nai-report na untoward adverse reactions among these children vaccinated.
Kasi dito, kung sakasakali magkaroon ng komplikasyon, andito na. Matutugunan ka agad, mapapangasiwaan ka agad kung ano man ang maging problema. Meron, kung magkaroon man, matapos silang mabakunahan.
More than 30 million Pfizer and also 15 million Moderna ang dumadating na ngayon simula pa ng October. At saka nagkapasalamat tayo sa US government and also sa COVAX at WHO. Nag-donate sila ng more than 10 million na Pfizer. So all in all, magkakaroon tayo ng more or less mga 15 million na pwede natin gamitin sa mga bata.
The initial rollout for the pediatric population aged 15 to 17 began on Friday in 8 Metro Manila hospitals, namely the Philippine Children's Medical Center, National Children's Hospital, Philippine Heart Center, Pasig City Children's Hospital, Fidel Mundo Medical Center, Philippine General Hospital, St. Luke's Medical Center in Bonifacio Global City, and Makati Medical Center. The National Task Force Against COVID-19 earlier said this would expand to minors aged 12 to 14 and eventually to those residing in the provinces. A total of 1,151 minors with comorbidities have been inoculated with their first dose of the vaccine against COVID-19 as of 8 p.m. yesterday.
Staying in the country, the Department of Health is awaiting the World Health Organization's official recommendation to give additional doses of the COVID-19 vaccine to immunocompromised persons, senior citizens, and healthcare workers. DOH Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeire, in a laging handa briefing on Saturday, said the WHO is expected to release its final recommendation by November. She also clarified that booster shots and additional doses are different, and the WHO has yet to recommend a third shot for the general population.
Kailangan po natin ilagay sa konteksto ito. Unang-una, yung official document na lumabas po sa WHO did not specifically state any type of vaccine. Ang maliwanag lang po doon, ang sinasabi doon, kailangan ng third doses doon po sa mga immunocompromised individuals at maaari rin doon sa mga ating nakakatanda. Yun po yung nakalagay doon. And nakalagay din po doon na mayroon pong official recommendation na ilalabas ang WHO at yung kanilang SIDG team by November. So aantayin po natin yung final recommendations na yan. Kailangan pong maging maingat tayo sa pagbibigay nitong mga types ng vaccine kapag nagbibigay tayo ng reports kasi baka maapektuhan po yung vaccine confidence ng ating mga kababayan when in fact ang sinasabi naman ay yung immunocompromised ay hindi po makamount ng response. It's not really about the vaccines pero kung paano po natin ibibigay ito. So ko rin po, doon po sa kanilang official article or documentation, WHO did not specifically mention ito mga pangalan or brands ng bakuna. Ito po ay nanggaling sa kanilang mga spokespersons, yung mga nagsasalita sa media, and they were the ones who mentioned about these specific types of vaccines. Actually, doon po sa kanilang documentations, hindi lang po yung Chinese vaccines ang kanilang nai-rekomenda, kung hindi meron din hong pagbabanggit sa Janssen at saka sa AstraZeneca. And also, doon po sa atin pong HDAC recommendations, hindi rin po siningle out ang Chinese vaccines. Nakalagay nga po dyan lahat ng klase ng bakuna, maari po nating pag-aralan para ibigay for third doses para po sa ating mga kababayan, specific sa immunocompromised individuals at saka senior citizens. Again, let me reiterate, lahat po ng ating mga bakuna continue to protect against severe disease and death, and that is based on evidence. As explained po dun sa WHO na document, iba po ang booster doses dito sa additional doses na kanilang inirekomenda or yung third doses. Ito po ngayon ay pinag-uusapan ng WHO para po dito sa additional doses for immunocompromised, and hindi po nila binanggit yung boosters for the general population. So kailangan lang po maintindihan ng ating mga kababayan na meron hong pagkakaiba ang booster doses sa additional doses or third doses. At ang nirekomenda po ngayon, third doses or additional doses para po dun sa ating mga immunocompromised individuals, for senior citizens, and even for healthcare workers. So ito po ang ating mga plano underway na, pinag-uusapan na po ito kung paano po natin maipapatupad.
Meanwhile, an FDA advisory panel has endorsed a booster dose for another COVID vaccine. Now, this action involves the Johnson & Johnson single-shot vaccine. The FDA advisor said the extra shot can be administered 2 months after the initial jab. A preliminary study this week showed that people who have received the J&J vaccine may benefit from a booster dose of a different messenger RNA vaccine such as Pfizer or Moderna. The single-shot J&J vaccine was never as effective as its double-shot mRNA counterparts, but some evidence suggests it is less susceptible to waning than Pfizer and Moderna because of the viral vector technology behind it.
A Chicago judge on Friday banned a police union president from making public statements on the city's COVID-19 policy as a standoff over vaccine mandates sparked dueling lawsuits. Now, the dispute between Mayor Lori Lightfoot and police union head John Catanzara has made the city the latest flashpoint in a deeply polarized debate over vaccines and whether governments have the right to mandate them.
And if no? Because we believe that the FOP leadership is trying to foment an illegal work stoppage strike, pure and simple. We've laid that out in the materials, and we're not having that. The contract is clear and it's been known for a long time. The police unions are not authorized to strike. It's in their collective bargaining agreement, and it's a matter of state law. What we've seen from the Fraternal Order of Police, and particularly the leadership, is a lot of misinformation, a lot of half-truths, and frankly, flat-out lies in order to induce an insurrection. And we're not having that. And so we want to make it very, very clear that the law is on our side. We feel very confident about it. And if you ignore a directive of your supervisor, or worse, a direct order that's lawfully given, you're going to destroy your career. That is going to follow you forever. Over what? Going to a website, clicking yes or no, and if no, saying that you're going to sign up for testing? Really? That's worth it? I don't think it is.
The police union filed its own lawsuit Friday against Lightfoot and Chicago Police Superintendent David Brown that seeks to force arbitration over the matter. Like all city employees, Chicago police officers have been mandated to report their vaccine status to an online portal by midnight Friday. Those not vaccinated will be subject to twice weekly testing. Those who refuse to disclose their status have a few days grace to explain themselves, but face being placed on unpaid leave and eventually fired. The Chicago standoff comes as the city once again leads the United States in murders, with 639 homicides this year through October 13, up 55% from 2 years ago. With shootings also up 68% over the period and carjackings heading for a record, the threat of losing much of the police force, even temporarily, has caused a deep sense of unease. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker told a conservative radio host that he would consider calling up the National Guard.
In other news, Russia today topped 1,000 deaths over 24 hours for the first time since the start of the coronavirus pandemic, with the country's jab drive at a standstill and few restrictions in place. Now, an official government tally showed that 1,002 deaths and 33,208 new infections, setting a high for both fatalities and cases for the third day in a row. The surging outbreak has come with just 31% of Russians fully inoculated as of Saturday, according to the GoGov website, which tallies COVID-19 data from the regions. Authorities have blamed Russians for the growing outbreak. Health Minister Mikhail Murashko this week pointed to their behavior, while Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said everything had been done to give the public a chance to save their lives by getting vaccinated. Russia's fatalities from COVID now stand at 222,315, the highest toll in Europe, even as authorities are accused of downplaying the severity of Russia's outbreak.
We will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Factual.
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
Timely information. Balanced, not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know. Know the important updates in Asia in ASEAN in Focus. Track the latest stories in the provinces in Aguila Provincia. Tune into Mata ng Agila, the evening primetime news program of Net25. Balanced and objective, Mata ng Agila covers national and international issues, tackles news on business, health, science and technology, entertainment, sports and human interest features, and current events. And Eagle News International delivers the latest global reports, impartial, accessible, and up-to-date. It brings to fore EBC's rich international scope and access to valuable information streams.
Well, thank you to thank our health outdoor.
Catch these programs on Net25. You can also watch our news programs through eaglenews.ph and Eagle News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Welcome back to the news. Global stock markets rose on Friday, boosted by positive U.S. corporate earnings and consumer spending, while oil prices pushed even higher and Bitcoin homed in on a record. All three major U.S. stock indices posted solid gains, with the S&P 500 finishing with a weekly increase of 1.8%. London's FTSE 100, Frankfurt's blue chip DAX, and the CAC 400 or 40 in Paris all closed higher as well after strong showings on Asian markets. Investors put aside concerns about surging inflation as they turned their attention to a series of good earnings results in the United States, notably at major banks. And just like that, inflation isn't a problem. The earnings news is great, and it's clear skies ahead for the stock market, said Patrick O'Hare, analyst at Briefing.com. He also said that may be an oversimplification of the situation, but the mood of the market has clearly shifted in the past few days. Goldman Sachs reported a jump in third quarter profits on Friday behind robust gains in its financial advisory and trading divisions. Now, the U.S. economy appears to be on track. Now, new data showed on Friday with retail sales posting a surprise 0.7% increase in September, pushed by broad gains that extended beyond gasoline and autos. U.S. travel-related stocks had a good day after the White House announced the United States will reopen its borders on November 8 to foreign visitors fully vaccinated against COVID-19.
In related news, Bitcoin reached the $60,000 mark for the first time since April. Ongoing hopes that the Securities and Exchange Commission will allow the first U.S. exchange-traded fund for cryptocurrency futures. Now, the move, which Bloomberg News said could occur next week, would place Bitcoin in a financial instrument that is traded like other securities, potentially making it more attractive to traditional investors. The ETF would add to an eventful year for the world's leading digital currency, which hit a record high at $64,870 in April and became a legal tender in El Salvador, the first country to adopt it officially. A SEC Bitcoin ETF approval is a watershed moment for the crypto industry, as this could be the key driver for getting the next wave of crypto investors, that according to Edward Moya, senior market analyst at Owanda. North Sea Brent crude, meanwhile, soared to $85.10 a barrel, a level last seen in October 2018, with the International Energy Agency raising its forecast for demand as coal and gas shortages have triggered a switch to oil. According to a Business Mirror's report, crude futures have jumped in recent weeks as natural gas prices hit records. On Thursday, meanwhile, the International Energy Agency said the crisis is spilling into oil markets and could add 500,000 barrels a day to demand in the coming months. That is deepening inventory draws as the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, and its allies only gently ease output constraints.
U.S. President Joe Biden signed into law a bill to lift the nation's borrowing authority, averting the threat of a first-ever debt default, but only for a few weeks. On Tuesday, the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives voted along party lines to pass the stopgap $480 billion hike, which advanced from the Senate last Thursday after weeks of heated debate. Without this increase in the debt limit, the Treasury warned that the federal government would be incapable of securing and servicing loans after October 18. This would have reverberated around the world as an economic catastrophe. This increase in the debt ceiling is expected to be sufficient to allow the federal government to continue to meet its full commitments through early December. The White House said that in a one-sentence statement announcing Biden signed the bill. The new arrangement merely kicks the can down the road possibly to complicate another major funding deadline, a shutdown that would begin from December 3 when the government's coffers theoretically run out.
Staying in the U.S., the country will reopen its land and air borders on November 8 to foreign visitors fully vaccinated against COVID-19, ending a more than 18-month ban on travel from much of the globe that separated families, hobbled tourism, and strained diplomatic ties. Take a look. The restrictions was guided by public health stringent and consistent, said White House Assistant Press Secretary Kevin Munoz in a tweet on Friday announcing the new policy. He said the announcement and date applies to both international air travel and land travel. The months of restrictions affecting hundreds of millions of people helped fuel both personal and economic suffering brought on by the pandemic. International Air Transport Association, or IATA Chief Willie Walsh, said that for the millions who have been locked out of the U.S. for up to 18 months, it's great news that the U.S. will welcome fully vaccinated foreign travelers. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights, sharpen your instincts for smart decision-making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Iyo sanang matandaan bago tuluyan lumisan na minsan ang minahal ay ako.
Hi guys, it's me Fonzie. And I'm actually inviting you to please catch me on Letters and Music, on air and online this coming Sunday, October 17 from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock p.m. only here in Net 25. See you there!
Welcome back. 3 astronauts successfully docked with China's new space station on Saturday on what is set to be Beijing's longest crewed mission to date and the latest landmark in its drive to become a major space power. The 3 blasted off shortly after midnight or 1600 GMT Friday from the Jiuquan Launch Center in northwestern China's Gobi Desert. The China Manned Space Agency said that with the team expected to spend 6 months at the Tiangong Space Station. The space agency declared the launch a success and said the crew were in good shape. Mission Commander Zhai Zhibang, 55 years old, a former fighter pilot who performed the country's first spacewalk in 2008, said the team would undertake more complex spacewalks than during previous missions. The crew include military pilot Wang Yaping, 41, who is the first woman to visit the space station after becoming China's second woman in space in 2013. The other team member is People's Liberation Army pilot Ye Guangfu, 41 years old. Saturday's blastoff came shortly after China launched its first solar exploration satellite into space, equipped with a telescope to observe changes in the sun. The Chinese Space Agency is planning a total of 11 missions to Tiangong through to the end of the year or next year, including at least 2 more crewed launches that will deliver 2 lab modules to expand the 70-ton station. China's space ambitions have been fueled in part by a U.S. ban on its astronauts on the International Space Station, a collaboration among the United States, Russia, Canada, Europe, and Japan.
And more space news. This time, NASA launched a spacecraft called Lucy on a 12-year mission to explore Jupiter's Trojan asteroids for the first time on Saturday, gathering new insights into the solar system's formation. Take a look.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. Atlas V takes flight, sending Lucy
responsible
to uncover the
for
fossils
propelling
of our solar system.
The Atlas V rocket responsible for propelling the probe took off at 5:34 a.m. local time or 0934 GMT from Cape Canaveral. Named after an ancient fossil for a pre-human ancestor, Lucy will become the first solar-powered spacecraft to venture so far from the sun, and it will observe more asteroids than any probe before it, 8 in all. Lucy will also make 3 Earth flybys for gravity assists, making it the first spacecraft to return to our planet's vicinity from the outer solar system. Lucy's first encounter will be in 2025 with asteroid Donald Johnson in the main belt between Mars and Jupiter. The asteroid is named after the discoverer of the Lucy fossil. Between 2027 and 2033, meanwhile, it will encounter 7 Trojan asteroids, 5 in the swarm that leads Jupiter, and 2 in the swarm that trails the gas giant. The Jupiter Trojan asteroids, thought to number well over 7,000, are leftover raw materials from the formation of our solar system's giant planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, according to scientists.
Wow, amazing, amazing developments in
I know.
exploration. Imagine how much thicker the books will be for students in the future.
That's true.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I know. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. It is the weekend. Please enjoy it, but please be safe. I'm CJ Hero. See you on Monday.
And before we go, I would like to greet my cousin, a very belated happy birthday, Alice. She's in Toronto, Canada. Happy birthday, Alice. Sorry, I forgot. And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we'll see you back next week. And
we live in interesting
times.